The cold blue light of distant stars filtered through the viewport as Commander Jack Reynolds stared out at the vast emptiness of space. His transport ship was minutes away from docking at Sentinel Station, and his stomach twisted with both excitement and dread. "Commander, we're starting final approach procedures," said the pilot over the intercom. "Please prepare for docking." Jack nodded to himself and gathered his few belongings. After 20 years of flying combat missions for the Galactic Alliance, he traveled light. One duffel bag contained everything he owned: some clothes, a few paper books, and a small metal box with photos of friends who hadn't made it back from battle. The transport shuddered as it connected with Sentinel Station's docking bay. Jack felt the familiar sensation of artificial gravity adjusting as the airlock sealed. When the doors finally opened, he stepped onto the station that would be his new home. Sentinel Station had once been the pride of the Alliance fleet. Now, it looked tired and worn, much like the war itself. The hallways that should have bustled with activity were nearly empty. The few crew members he passed walked with slumped shoulders and tired eyes. A young officer approached, her uniform crisp, despite the general atmosphere of defeat. "Commander Reynolds, I'm Lieutenant Pike. Admiral Grant asked me to escort you to the briefing room." Jack followed her through the maze of corridors. "How bad is it out here, Lieutenant? The reports don't tell the whole story." Pike's steps faltered briefly. "We lost 2 more squadrons last month. The Dominion ships, they're faster, more advanced. Our pilots fight well, but..." She didn't need to finish. Jack had heard this story too many times. The briefing room was small and packed with officers when they arrived. At the head of the table sat Admiral Grant, a stern woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much war. "Reynolds," she said, not bothering to stand. "Welcome to the last stand of the Alliance." The room fell silent. Jack placed his bag on the floor and straightened to his full height. "With respect, Admiral, if I thought this was our last stand, I wouldn't have accepted the assignment." A few quiet chuckles broke the tension. Grant's expression didn't change, but something sparked in her eyes. Perhaps a glimmer of hope. "You've been sent here because your methods get results," she said. "Unorthodox, dangerous, and completely against protocol, but results nonetheless. I need that now more than ever." Jack nodded. "When do I meet my squadron?" "Tomorrow," Grant replied. "Tonight you need to understand what we're facing." She activated the holographic display in the center of the table. The blue light illuminated faces around the room as a 3D model of their sector appeared. "The Dominion has established bases here, here, and here," she said, pointing to 3 locations surrounding Sentinel Station. "Intelligence suggests they're planning something big, a final push that could break through to the core human worlds. Their ships are faster, their weapons more powerful, and their targeting systems are beyond anything we've developed," added a tall, thin man at the end of the table. "I'm Colonel West, head of strategic operations. The simple truth is, Commander, we're outmatched." Jack studied the hologram carefully. "Maybe in technology," he admitted, "but there's one thing the Dominion has never understood about humans." "And?" "What's that?" asked Grant. "We're stubborn. We break rules. We do things that make no logical sense." Jack pointed to the display. "The Dominion relies on perfect logic and predictable patterns. That's their weakness." West scoffed. "We've lost 1,000 pilots trying to outmaneuver Dominion targeting systems. They predict every move." "Because we've been flying like we're supposed to," Jack countered. "By the book. By the laws of physics and optimal flight patterns." He looked around the room, meeting each pair of eyes. "What if we stop doing that?" The room erupted in argument exactly as Jack expected. After letting it continue for a minute, Admiral Grant raised her hand for silence. "That's why he's here," she said simply. "Because nothing else is working." The meeting ended shortly after, with Jack assigned quarters and told to report to Hangar Bay 3 the following morning. As he walked with Lieutenant Pike to his room, he could feel the weight of expectation on his shoulders. "Is it true?" Pike asked suddenly. "The stories about how you took down a Dominion destroyer with just 3 fighters at the Battle of Orion's Belt?" Jack smiled slightly. 4 fighters. and we got lucky. That's not what the reports say. They say you flew a pattern that shouldn't have been possible, that you broke formation and did something no pilot training program would ever teach. They stopped outside his quarters. Jack considered her words carefully before answering. Lieutenant, do you know why humans still pilot fighters when AI could do it more efficiently? She shook her head. Because sometimes the winning move isn't the logical one. It's the one no one sees coming. He picked up his bag. Get some rest. Tomorrow we start changing how this war is fought. Morning came too quickly. Jack made his way to Hangar Bay 3 after a night of studying battle reports and Dominion ship specifications. What he found was a squadron in name only. 12 pilots with good records but broken spirits. They stood at attention when he entered, a mix of veterans and young recruits. Jack walked slowly down the line, looking each one in the eye. At ease, he said finally. My name is Commander Jack Reynolds. As of today, you're all part of what we're calling Chaos Squadron. He saw confusion on their faces. An appropriate name because chaos is exactly what we're going to bring to the Dominion. A burly pilot with a thick beard stepped forward. With all due respect, sir, we've tried everything against their ships. Their targeting computers predict every move we make. Pilot? Miller, sir? Tom Miller. Well, Miller, that's because we've been making moves they can predict. Jack turned and walked to a nearby console, pulling up footage of a recent battle. Look here. Every Dominion weapon fires exactly where our ships are going to be, not where they are. They're using advanced algorithms to predict flight paths. A younger pilot spoke up. So we're already dead before we move. How do we fight that? Jack smiled. By breaking the rules of engagement. By flying in ways that make no sense. The Dominion builds their strategy on the assumption that we'll make optimal choices. What if we don't? He looked around at their skeptical faces. Today we start training differently. We're going to rewrite every flight pattern you've ever learned. We're going to move in ways that defy conventional tactics. Jack's voice grew stronger with each word. And when we're done, we're going to show the Dominion that they may understand physics and mathematics, but they don't understand humans. For the first time since he'd arrived at Sentinel Station, Jack saw something besides defeat in the eyes looking back at him. It wasn't hope, not yet, but it was a start. Again! Jack shouted as the simulation ended. The pilots of Chaos Squadron groaned, sweat dripping from their foreheads despite the cool air of the training room. 2 weeks had passed since Jack's arrival at Sentinel Station. For 14 straight days, he had pushed his squadron harder than any of them thought possible. The simulator pods hummed as they reset for another run. Sir, said Miller, wiping his face with a towel, we've been at this for 6 hours. The same simulation over and over. What exactly are we trying to accomplish? Jack walked to the center of the room where a holographic display showed the results of their last run, 12 ships against a simulated Dominion patrol. And once again half the squadron had been destroyed. What do you see? Jack asked, pointing to the flight paths of their vessels compared to the enemy's. The pilots gathered around, tired and frustrated. A young woman named Alex Reed spoke up first. They're still predicting us, even when we try random maneuvers. Exactly. Jack nodded. But look closer at the targeting data. He zoomed in on one of the simulated Dominion vessels. Oh! See that? There's a pattern to how their weapons track. Reed leaned in. They're not firing at where we are or even where we're going to be. They're firing at where we should be if we were flying optimal paths. Jack smiled. For the first time, someone else was seeing what he had noticed for years. Their entire combat system is built on the assumption that we'll fly in ways that make mathematical sense, that will follow the laws of physics and the rules of proper space combat. He switched the display to show footage from real battles. I've been studying these encounters for months. The Dominion doesn't just have better technology, they have a fundamental philosophy. Their entire society values order, efficiency, perfection. It extends to how they fight. Miller scratched his beard. So what? We can't outrun physics. No, Jack agreed. But we can use physics in ways they don't expect. He pulled up a new simulation. Look at this. When a Dominion targeting system locks onto a ship, it creates a prediction cone, all possible efficient paths the target might take. The display showed a cone-shaped projection extending from a human fighter. But what if we deliberately fly outside that cone? Jack continued. What if we do something so seemingly stupid, so inefficient that their system doesn't even consider it a possibility? The room fell silent as his words sank in. You want us to fly badly? On purpose? Reed asked incredulously. I want you to fly human, Jack corrected. Unpredictable, inefficient when needed, making choices based on instinct rather than calculation. He switched off the display. That's enough for today. Rest up. Tomorrow we try something new. Later that night, Jack sat alone in his quarters reviewing battle footage for the 100th time. A knock at his door interrupted his concentration. Enter, he called. Lieutenant Pike stepped in, carrying a data pad. Commander Admiral Grant asked me to deliver the latest intelligence reports. Jack gestured to an empty chair. Any news worth sharing? Pike sat down with a sigh. Nothing good. The Dominion is moving more ships to this sector. At their current pace, they could launch a major offensive within 2 weeks. Jack took the data pad and scrolled through the information. We're not ready, he muttered. Sir? Pike hesitated. There are rumors about what you're doing with Chaos Squadron. Some of the other officers think you're wasting time on impossible theories. Jack looked up from the pad. And what do you think, Lieutenant? I think, she paused, choosing her words carefully. I think we need something impossible right now. Jack smiled slightly. Then maybe you can help me with something. He turned his screen toward her. I've been trying to get access to the engine control systems for our fighters. The safety protocols are too restrictive for what I have in mind. Pike's eyes widened. You want to modify the engines? That would require authorization from engineering, from Dr. Marcus himself. Then introduce me to Dr. Marcus. The following morning, Jack stood in the main engineering bay with a small, nervous-looking man who didn't seem pleased to see him. Absolutely not, Dr. Marcus said, pushing his glasses up his nose. The safety protocols exist for a reason, Commander. Remove them and your pilots could tear their ships apart with a wrong move. Jack leaned against a workbench. What if I told you those safety measures are exactly what the Dominion is counting on? Their entire combat strategy assumes we won't do certain things because they're too dangerous or inefficient. Marcus shook his head. Physics doesn't care about combat strategy. Stress a hull beyond its tolerances and it breaks. Simple as that. I'm not suggesting we ignore physics, Jack replied. I'm suggesting we use it differently. Your engines are capable of more than the safety protocols allow. Yes, but Dr. Marcus, Jack interrupted. In 3 days, I need to take my squadron out for a real test against a Dominion patrol. Before that happens, I need to know exactly what these ships can really do. Marcus stared at him for a long moment. You're serious about this? Dead serious. We're losing this war because we're playing by rules the Dominion wrote. It's time to change the game. The engineer sighed deeply. I can give you limited access, enough to push the engines 15% beyond current restrictions. Any more than that, and I can't guarantee the structural integrity of your fighters. Jack grinned. That's all I need. A 15% advantage they won't see coming. 2 days later, Chaos Squadron gathered in the hangar bay. Their fighters had been modified according to Jack's specifications, with Dr. Marcus personally overseeing the work, despite his continued objections. Listen up, Jack addressed his pilots. Today we run a real combat drill. The modifications to your engines will allow maneuvers that should be impossible according to standard flight protocols. Should be impossible? Miller repeated nervously. The key word is should, Jack replied with a smile. Your ships can now perform tight turns at speeds that would normally trigger automatic slowdown. You can briefly cut power during acceleration to create unpredictable momentum shifts. And most importantly, he paused for effect. You can now discharge your weapons during thrust vector changes. Reed raised an eyebrow. Why would we want to do that? It throws off targeting. Exactly. Jack nodded. It throws off our targeting, which means it will throw off theirs too. The energy discharge creates a brief field distortion that their systems can't account for. He walked down the line of fighters, inspecting each one. We're not trying to outshoot them or outrun them. We're trying to confuse them, to make them question their understanding of how combat works. And if this doesn't work? Asked a pilot named Jones. Then we'll die no differently than hundreds of pilots before us, Jack said bluntly. But if it does work, if we can prove my theory, we might just change the course of this war. As the pilots climbed into their cockpits, Admiral Grant entered the hangar. She walked directly to Jack, her face set in a grim expression. Commander, I've just received word. A Dominion patrol has been detected near the Archer's Point asteroid field. 3 cruisers heading this way. Jack felt a chill run down his spine. That's where we were planning our test run. It seems your test just became real, Grant said. I'm authorizing you to engage, but this is reconnaissance only. If my reports are correct, the Dominion has sent one of their best tacticians to lead this patrol, Commander Vex. Jack had heard the name. Vex was responsible for some of the Alliance's worst defeats. We'll be careful, he promised, though they both knew it was a lie. What he was planning was anything but careful. As Jack climbed into his own fighter, he felt a strange mixture of fear and excitement. For years, he had studied the Dominion, watching how they fought, looking for patterns and weaknesses that others had missed. Now it was time to test his theory against a real enemy. Chaos Squadron, he said into his comm as the hangar bay doors began to open. Remember what we've practiced. Do the unexpected. Break the rules. And no matter what happens, don't fly like a computer. Fly like a human. 12 fighters launched into the darkness of space, heading toward a confrontation that would either prove Jack's theory or end in disaster. The real test was about to begin. The hangar erupted with cheers as Chaos Squadron returned from their encounter with the Dominion patrol. What had begun as a risky test run had ended with something no one at Sentinel Station had seen in months. A victory, small but significant. Jack climbed out of his fighter, his flight suit drenched with sweat. The engagement had been brief, just under 15 minutes, but in that short time, his squadron had managed to disable 1 Dominion cruiser and force the others to retreat. Admiral Grant was waiting on the deck, her usually stern face showing the ghost of a smile. It seems your crazy theory has some merit, Commander. Jack nodded, too exhausted to celebrate. We caught them by surprise. That won't happen again. Explain to me exactly what happened out there, Grant said as they walked toward the debriefing room. We did everything wrong, tactically speaking, Jack replied. When their targeting systems locked on, we deliberately flew in ways that maximized our vulnerability instead of minimizing it. We accelerated when we should have slowed down. We turned toward weapons fire instead of away from it. And this worked because their systems are programmed to predict optimal responses. When we did the opposite, their targeting algorithms failed. Jack paused at the entrance to the debriefing room. But Commander Vex is no fool. He'll study what happened and adapt. Inside, the pilots of Chaos Squadron were already reviewing the combat footage, their earlier fatigue forgotten in the excitement of success. Look there. Reed was pointing at a specific moment in the battle. When Jones cut his engines mid-turn, the Dominion ship fired where he should have been, not where he actually went. Miller nodded excitedly. And when I discharged weapons during that vector change, their targeting systems completely lost lock for nearly 3 seconds. Jack watched them with pride. They were starting to understand, to truly see the potential of his approach. But he knew this was just the beginning. Enjoy this moment, he told them, because tomorrow, the real work starts. Word of their success spread quickly throughout Sentinel Station. By the next morning, pilots from other squadrons were approaching Jack, asking to join his training sessions. Admiral Grant, seeing the surge in morale, officially expanded Chaos Squadron to 3 full units, 36 pilots in total. But not everyone was convinced. Colonel West confronted Jack in the mess hall 3 days after their initial encounter. You got lucky, West said, setting his tray down across from Jack. And now Grant is reallocating resources based on one minor skirmish. Jack continued eating. Luck had nothing to do with it. We exploited a fundamental flaw in Dominion combat doctrine. Oh, flaw they'll correct, West countered. You think their engineers aren't already updating their targeting systems? Of course they are, Jack agreed, which is why we're developing new maneuvers every day. West leaned forward. You're giving these pilots false hope. Worse, you're teaching them to fly recklessly. When the Dominion comes in force, this chaos approach will get them all killed. Jack finally looked up from his meal. With respect, Colonel, following the established doctrine has already gotten hundreds of pilots killed. At least we're trying something new. As West stormed away, Lieutenant Pike slid into his vacant seat. You've made quite an impression, Commander. Half the station thinks you're a genius, the other half thinks you've lost your mind. Jack smiled slightly. And what do you think, Lieutenant? I think, she said, lowering her voice, that you should know there's a Dominion spy on this station. Jack's smile vanished. How sure are you? Security caught unusual transmission patterns last night. Someone sent encrypted data packets during our shift change when monitoring is at its lightest. Do we know what information was sent? Pike shook her head. Not yet, but given the timing. They're sending data about our new tactics, Jack finished. The thought. Which means we need to accelerate our training. Where's Dr. Marcus? Jack found the engineer in his workshop surrounded by holographic engine schematics. The small man barely looked up when Jack entered. Before you ask, Commander, I'm already working on the next set of modifications. Your 15% advantage won't be enough once the Dominion adapts. Jack studied the schematics. What are you proposing? Something risky, Marcus admitted, but potentially game-changing. He highlighted a specific part of the engine design. If we reconfigure the thrust vectoring system to permit momentary power surges during direction changes, we could achieve maneuverability that defies conventional physics. At what cost? Jack asked, knowing there had to be a catch. Marcus removed his glasses, rubbing tired eyes. Structural integrity. The stress on the hull would be enormous, and the pilots would experience G-forces at the very edge of human tolerance. How long to implement these changes? A week, maybe less if I pull engineers from other projects. Jack nodded. Do it, and keep it quiet. We have a security leak. For the next 5 days, Chaos Squadron trained constantly while Marcus and his team worked on the fighters. Jack pushed the pilots harder than ever, introducing increasingly erratic flight patterns and encouraging them to develop their own unpredictable maneuvers. The key, he explained during an evening briefing, is to never establish a pattern. The moment your movements become predictable even slightly, their systems will lock on. Reed raised her hand. Sir, we've been analyzing the combat footage. There's something strange about how the Dominion ships reacted when we used the engine. Cut during turns. She pulled up the relevant data. See here, for a fraction of a second their targeting systems actually overcompensated, firing far wide of our position. If we could somehow extend that moment of confusion. Jack studied the data with growing excitement. You're right. There's a vulnerability we haven't fully exploited yet. He turned to Miller. How are the simulator adjustments coming? Ready for testing, Miller replied. We've programmed it to replicate what we think will be their adapted targeting algorithms. Good. Tomorrow we start running scenarios with the new engine configurations. As the meeting ended, Admiral Grant entered with a grave expression. Commander, we've intercepted Dominion communications. They're sending Commander Vex significant reinforcements. A full battle group. ETA 8 days. The room fell silent. A battle group meant at least one dreadnought and multiple heavy cruisers. Far more than Chaos Squadron could handle, even with their new tactics. We're not ready, Jack admitted. We need more time to train more pilots. Time is the one thing we don't have, Grant replied. I'm authorizing round-the-clock training and pulling pilots from other stations. You have 1 week to prepare them for what's coming. After the Admiral left, Jack remained in the briefing room alone, staring at the holographic display showing the approaching Dominion forces. What had begun as a theory, a desperate attempt to find any advantage against a superior enemy, had now become the Alliance's last hope. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Dr. Marcus entered, looking even more tired than usual. "I've completed the first set of engine modifications," he said. "But there's something else you should see." He placed a small device on the table. It projected a schematic of the Dominion targeting system, more detailed than anything Jack had seen before. "Where did you get this?" Jack asked, amazed. Lieutenant Pike found it hidden in the station's database. Someone uploaded it 6 hours ago before attempting to transmit it out. Security blocked the transmission. Jack studied the schematic carefully. It confirmed everything he had theorized and more. The Dominion systems were even more predictive than he had realized, but that also meant they were more vulnerable to unpredictability. "This changes everything," he whispered. "With this, we can develop counters to their entire targeting approach." Marcus nodded. "I thought you'd say that. That's why I've already begun reconfiguring the simulator programs." As the engineer left, Jack felt a renewed sense of purpose. The spy had inadvertently given them the very information they needed most. Now the race was on, to train enough pilots in the new tactics before the Dominion arrived in force. The next days would determine not just the fate of Sentinel Station, but potentially the entire war. The real fight was about to begin. 7 days passed in a blur of simulator runs, engine modifications, and intense training. Jack pushed his pilots to their physical and mental limits, sometimes keeping them in the simulators for 18 hours straight. He knew it was brutal, but necessary. The Dominion wouldn't show mercy when they arrived, and arrive they did, a day earlier than expected. The alarm blared throughout Sentinel Station, jerking Jack from his first real sleep in days. He was on his feet and moving before his mind fully cleared, muscle memory taking over as he rushed toward the command center. Admiral Grant was already there, staring at the tactical display with grim determination. "They've just dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. 16 ships total, including a dreadnought." Jack studied the formation. It was classic Dominion tactics, a wedge formation with heavy cruisers at the front and the massive dreadnought protected in the rear. Commander Vex was playing it by the book, at least for now. "Status of our squadrons?" Jack asked. "Chaos Squadron is at full strength, 36 fighters ready for launch. The rest of our flight groups can provide an additional 48. Against a Dominion battle group." Grant didn't need to finish the thought. The odds were overwhelming. "We need to deploy immediately," Jack said, "before they get closer to the station." Grant nodded. "Launch all squadrons, but Jack," she added as he turned to leave, "this isn't just about testing your theories anymore. If we lose here, there's nothing between the Dominion and the core. Human worlds." "I know," Jack replied quietly. "We won't lose." In the hangar, pilots rushed to their fighters. The mood was tense but focused. These weren't the same defeated men and women Jack had met when he first arrived. They had tasted victory, seen proof that the seemingly invincible Dominion could be vulnerable. Jack found Reed checking her fighter systems. "How are the new modifications holding?" he asked. "Dr. Marcus says they'll give us about 10 minutes of enhanced maneuvering before the stress on the hulls becomes critical," she replied. "After that, structural integrity isn't guaranteed. 10 minutes might be all we need." Jack placed a hand on her shoulder. "Remember, stay unpredictable. The moment you fall into a pattern, you're vulnerable." Miller approached, his usual humor replaced by seriousness. "Commander, there's something you should know. We've been studying the Dominion fleet, the Dreadnought. It's the Inevitability, Vex's flagship." Jack felt a chill. The Inevitability was known throughout the Alliance as the deadliest ship in the Dominion fleet. It had been present at 3 major battles, all of them ending in devastating human defeats. "Then we target it specifically," Jack decided. "If we can damage or destroy their flagship, it might break their will to fight." As his pilots climbed into their cockpits, Jack took a moment to broadcast to all squadrons. "This is Commander Reynolds. Today we face the largest Dominion force ever encountered in this sector. They outnumber us, outgun us, and believe their victory is inevitable." He paused, letting his words sink in. "They're wrong. Because today we're not fighting their way. We're fighting our way, the human way. Unpredictable, adaptive, and completely illogical by their standards." He could almost feel the determination building across the comm. Chaos Squadron will lead the attack. Remember your training. Do the unexpected. Break the rules. And no matter what happens, make them remember that they picked a fight with humans. 84 fighters launched from Sentinel Station, forming up into their designated groups before accelerating toward the approaching Dominion fleet. Jack led Chaos Squadron at the front, his mind already racing through potential strategies. All units maintain communication discipline, he ordered. Use only the encrypted channels. If the Dominion has studied our previous engagement, they'll be monitoring for tactical chatter. The distance between the two forces closed rapidly. Jack watched as the Dominion ships adjusted their formation slightly, a sign that Commander Vex was aware of their approach and preparing to counter their tactics. They're adapting already, Reed observed on the private channel. Look at how their lead cruisers are spreading out to create overlapping firing arcs. Jack nodded to himself. Exactly what I expected. Vex is smart, but he's still thinking conventionally. He switched to the squadron channel. Chaos Squadron, execute pattern Sigma on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark. The fighters of Chaos Squadron suddenly split into 3 groups, each taking a completely different vector than would be tactically sound. Some accelerated directly toward the enemy. Others cut engines entirely, letting momentum carry them in an unpowered drift, while a third group executed wild spins and turns that seemed to have no purpose or pattern. For a moment, the Dominion ships hesitated, their targeting system struggling to prioritize among the chaotically moving fighters. Then the space between the forces erupted with weapons fire. The battle quickly devolved into a swirling, confusing melee. Standard alliance formations broke apart as each Chaos Squadron pilot implemented the unpredictable tactics they had trained for. The Dominion cruisers, used to facing organized attack patterns, struggled to maintain target locks. Jack pushed his fighter into a tight spiral, deliberately, flying through the debris field of a destroyed vessel, something no tactical manual would ever recommend. The debris provided random, unpredictable cover while also confusing enemy sensors. Group 3 status report, he called as he emerged from the field. We've disabled the weapons array on Cruiser 2, Miller responded, his voice tight with concentration. But they're adapting fast. Their targeting systems are starting to anticipate some of our maneuvers. Jack frowned. This was the moment he had warned about. The Dominion learning, adapting to their tactics. It was time for the next phase. All Chaos units implement wildcard maneuvers. Use the engine modifications now. Across the battlefield, the fighters of Chaos Squadron engaged their modified engines. The changes Dr. Marcus had made allowed for impossible bursts of speed and direction changes that no conventional craft could achieve, and no targeting system could predict. Jack felt his body strain against the G-forces as he executed a turn that should have torn his fighter apart. Warning lights flashed across his console as the hull integrity indicators dropped into the red zone. Commander? Dr. Marcus's voice came through on the emergency channel. The structural integrity of your fighters won't hold much longer under these conditions. Just a little more, Jack muttered, more to himself than in response. Through his viewport, he could see the massive form of the inevitability moving into attack position. The Dreadnought's main weapons were powering up, preparing to deliver devastating fire that could destroy multiple fighters with a single shot. It was now or never. Reed, Miller, Jones, form on me, Jack ordered. The rest of you continue harassing the cruisers. We're going for the Dreadnought. 4 fighters broke away from the main battle, accelerating toward the inevitability at maximum speed. The Dreadnought immediately oriented its main weapons toward them. Standard evasive pattern for 30 seconds, Jack instructed his small group. Make them think we're using conventional tactics. Then, on my mark, execute maximum wildcard. The fighters weaved and dodged in textbook evasive patterns as they approached. The inevitability's weapons tracked them easily, preparing to fire with deadly accuracy. Get ready, Jack said, watching the distance counter tick down. 3, 2, 1, now. In that instant, the 4 fighters did something that defied all combat logic. Instead of continuing to evade, they cut engines completely, fired thrusters in seemingly random patterns, and discharged their weapons while executing impromptu spins. The combined effect created a momentary energy field distortion that completely confused the dreadnought's targeting systems. The massive energy weapons of the inevitability fired and missed completely. "Now," Jack shouted. "Full thrust, direct approach." The four fighters surged forward in the wake of the dreadnought's failed attack, closing the distance before its weapons could recharge. They streaked along the massive hull, firing precision shots at key systems that the stolen schematics had identified as vulnerabilities. Jack's fighter shuddered violently as a defensive weapon grazed his wing. Warning alarms blared as his structural integrity dropped to critical levels. He ignored them, focusing entirely on his target, the dreadnought's main power coupling. "One shot," he whispered. "Just need one perfect shot." He fired. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a cascade of explosions erupted along the dreadnought's hull as the power coupling failed, triggering a chain reaction through connected systems. "All units, clear the dreadnought's vicinity," Jack ordered as he pulled away, his fighter protesting with every maneuver. The battle seemed to pause as both sides watched the mighty inevitability drift powerless, its lights flickering and weapons systems offline. For the first time in known history, a Dominion dreadnought had been neutralized by a handful of fighters. The impossible had happened, but the battle was far from over. The disabled dreadnought inevitability drifted silently against the backdrop of stars, its massive weapon systems offline and its running lights flickering weakly. Around it, the battle continued. But something fundamental had changed. The near-mythical flagship of Commander Vex, never before defeated, was now just another damaged vessel in space. Jack's fighter limped away from the dreadnought, warning lights flashing across his control panel. The stress of the wildcard maneuvers had pushed his ship's hull integrity to its breaking point. "All Chaos units, report status," he called over the comm. The responses came in quickly. 3 fighters lost, 11 with critical damage, but the rest still combat capable. Considering they were facing a Dominion battle group, the numbers were nothing short of miraculous. "Commander," Reed's voice came through, "the Dominion cruisers are regrouping. They're forming a defensive perimeter around the inevitability." Jack watched as the remaining Dominion vessels shifted position. Their previously perfect formation was now ragged and reactive. For the first time, they were fighting defensively rather than offensively. "They're protecting the dreadnought," Miller observed. "They don't know what to do without Vex directing the battle." Jack studied the tactical display. The Dominion still had 12 operational cruisers against their 80 remaining fighters. Under normal circumstances, those odds would still favor the Dominion heavily. But these weren't normal circumstances. "Admiral Grant," Jack called back to the station. "The Dominion force is off balance. If we press now, we might be able to force a full retreat." "Agreed," Grant replied. "All squadrons continue engagement. Focus on the cruisers closest to Sentinel Station." The battle resumed with renewed intensity. Human fighters darted between the massive Dominion vessels, using the chaotic tactics Jack had developed to confuse their targeting systems. But something unexpected was happening. The Dominion ships were beginning to adjust their firing patterns. "They're adapting again," Reed warned. "Their weapons are firing in broader spreads instead of precise targeting." Jack nodded grimly. It was inevitable. The Dominion might be rigid in their tactics, but they weren't stupid. If they couldn't predict exactly where a fighter would be, they would simply expand their firing zones to cover all possibilities. "Time for the next evolution," Jack said. All Chaos units switched to fusion patterns. The Chaos Squadron fighters immediately began operating in pairs, flying in perfectly mirrored patterns just long enough for Dominion targeting to lock on, then abruptly breaking in opposite, unpredictable directions. The effect was devastating. Dominion weapons would lock onto what appeared to be a predictable formation, only to find themselves firing at empty space as the fighters scattered in ways their algorithms couldn't anticipate. Jack guided his damaged fighter through the chaos, searching for a specific target. There, one of the Dominion communication cruisers, the vessels responsible for coordinating their fleet's movements. If they could disrupt the Dominion's ability to communicate, their advantage would grow exponentially. Miller, Jones, form on, Me, he ordered. We're taking out their comms. The three fighters converged on the communication cruiser, weaving through increasingly desperate defensive fire. Jack's ship shuddered as a glancing hit struck his already damaged wing. Structural. Integrity at 18%, his computer warned. Hull breach imminent. Just a little longer, Jack muttered, pushing the fighter beyond its design limits. They reached the cruiser, unleashing a barrage of weapons fire at its communication array. The delicate equipment exploded in a shower of debris and energy discharges. Immediately, the coordination between Dominion vessels became noticeably more erratic. "What's happening on the Inevitability?" Jack asked as they pulled away from the crippled cruiser. "Energy readings are fluctuating," Reed reported. "They appear to be attempting to restore main power." Jack made a quick decision. "All units, focus fire on the remaining cruisers. I'm going back to the Dreadnought." Ignoring the protests of both his crew and his ship's computer, Jack steered his fighter back toward the massive Inevitability. If Vex managed to restore power, the tide of battle could turn again. As he approached, he noticed a smaller vessel detaching from the Dreadnought's hangar bay, an escape shuttle. "Vex is running," he realized aloud. The Dominion commander was abandoning his flagship and his fleet. Something about this struck Jack as profoundly significant. The Dominion, with all their technological superiority and rigid adherence to perfect order, had never faced an enemy they couldn't predict. Now, confronted with human unpredictability, their legendary commander was fleeing rather than adapting. Jack targeted the escape shuttle, but hesitated. Destroying it would be tactically sound, eliminating a key Dominion leader, but allowing Vex to escape would send a different, perhaps more powerful message back to Dominion High Command. He made his choice, veering away from the shuttle and instead broadcasting on an open channel. "Dominion vessels, this is Commander Jack Reynolds of the Galactic Alliance. Your flagship is disabled. Your commander has abandoned you. This battle is over." For several tense moments, nothing happened. Then, one by one, the Dominion cruisers began powering down their weapon systems. Not surrendering, the Dominion never surrendered, but withdrawing from battle. The cheers that erupted over the comm system were deafening as Alliance pilots realized what was happening. For the first time in the war, a Dominion battle group was retreating. Jack watched as the Dominion vessels gathered their damaged and began a coordinated withdrawal from the sector, leaving the drifting hulk of the Inevitability behind. His fighters' warning systems had moved from urgent to critical, but he barely noticed. The significance of what had just happened was still sinking in. "All units return to Sentinel Station," Admiral Grant ordered, her voice steady despite the obvious emotion behind it. "Well done, everyone, especially you, Chaos Squadron." The flight back to the station passed in a blur for Jack. His fighter was barely responding to controls now, the frame groaning with every minor adjustment. When he finally landed in the hangar bay, engineering teams had to cut him out of the cockpit because the standard mechanisms had failed. The celebration in the hangar was like nothing Jack had ever seen. Pilots and station crew embraced, laughed, cried. Admiral Grant was waiting as Jack climbed down from his shattered fighter, her usually stern face now open with amazement. "You did it," she said simply. "You actually did it." Jack shook his head. "We all did it. Every pilot who was willing to try something new to break the rules of conventional combat." "The Dominion will analyze everything that happened here," Grant warned. "They'll develop new targeting systems, new counter-tactics." "Let them try," Jack replied. "That's the point they've never understood about humans. We don't follow patterns. We adapt, we improvise, we overcome. For every counter they develop, we'll find a new approach they haven't considered." In the days that followed, news of the battle spread throughout Alliance space. The recording of Chaos Squadron's tactics was transmitted to every flight school and military academy. What Jack had begun as a desperate theory had become the foundation for a new approach to space combat. 3 weeks after the battle, Jack stood in Admiral Grant's office as she showed him the latest intelligence reports. "The Dominion has pulled back from all fronts," she said. They're consolidating their forces, apparently for a major strategic reassessment. They're trying to understand what happened, Jack observed, to figure out how to counter our unpredictability. Will they succeed? Jack smiled slightly. They might develop better systems, more adaptive targeting, but they'll never fully understand the human element, our creativity, our willingness to take risks that make no logical sense. And Commander Vex? According to our intelligence, he's been reassigned to their interior defense forces. Apparently, the Dominion doesn't look kindly on commanders who abandon their flagships. Grant nodded, then handed Jack a datapad. These are your new orders. Fleet Command is establishing a dedicated training program based on your tactics. They're calling it the Chaos Initiative. Jack took the pad, scanning the details. They want me to oversee the training of all Alliance fighter pilots? Not just fighters, Grant corrected. They're adapting your principles for capital ships as well. This is becoming the new standard for Alliance combat doctrine. As Jack left the Admiral's office, he found the pilots of the original Chaos Squadron waiting in the corridor. Reed, Miller, Jones, all of them standing at attention. At ease, he said with a smile. What's all this about? We heard about your new assignment, Reed replied. We wanted to know if you'd be taking your squadron with you. Jack looked at the faces of these pilots who had trusted him, who had been willing to fly in ways that defied all conventional wisdom. You're damn right I am, he said. After all, someone has to teach the rest of the Alliance how to fly like humans instead of computers. As they walked together through the station, Jack felt a profound sense of accomplishment. By embracing what made humans different, their unpredictability, their creativity, their willingness to take seemingly irrational risks, they had turned the tide of a war that had seemed unwinnable. One human pilot had indeed rewritten the laws of space combat, and in doing so had reminded both humanity and their enemies of a fundamental truth. Sometimes the most powerful advantage isn't superior technology or perfect efficiency, but simply being unpredictably, irrationally, brilliantly human. The bridge of the Defiance was quiet except for the soft beeps of the control panels. Captain Jack Stone sat in his command chair, watching the stars through the main view screen. His ship, a mid-sized destroyer in Earth's defense fleet, was on a routine patrol at the edge of human space. Captain, I'm picking up something strange, said Officer Bob, who watched the sensor station. There's an object coming toward us, but it doesn't match any known ship in our database. Stone straightened in his chair. How far away? About 50,000 miles and closing fast. Put it on screen. The view screen changed to show a dark shape against the stars. As it came closer, they could see it better. The ship was unlike anything humans had built. It looked like a mix between a spider and a throwing star, with sharp points and a body that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Are they sending any messages? Stone asked. Linda, the communications officer, shook her head. Nothing, sir. I've tried all standard greeting formats. Keep trying. Send messages in all known languages and formats. Tom Reed, the science officer, spoke up from his station. Captain, I'm scanning the ship now. It's strange. The metal isn't like anything in our records. And I'm reading energy levels that shouldn't be possible with current technology. Stone nodded. Raise shields just to be safe. Sir, Bob called out, his voice tense. They're powering up something. Looks like weapons. Before Stone could respond, the alien ship fired. A beam of purple energy shot across space and hit the Defiance. The ship shook hard, throwing crew members against their stations. Damage report, Stone shouted over the blaring alarms. Shields down to 40% from just one hit, the tactical officer shouted back. Whatever they're using, it's cutting through our defenses like they're not even there. Stone gripped the arms of his chair as the ship rocked again. Return. Fire. Standard missiles and energy beams. The Defiance fired back, sending bright streaks of energy toward the alien ship. The missiles exploded against its hull, and the energy beams hit directly, but the alien ship seemed barely affected. No significant damage to their vessel, Tom reported, his face pale as he looked at his readings. Our weapons are like throwing rocks at a tank. The alien ship, which they would later learn belonged to a race called the Vorn, fired again. This time the beam hit the engine section of the Defiance. Engine power dropping, called Mark from engineering. We can't take another hit like that. Stone made a quick decision. Plot a retreat course, maximum speed. We need to warn Earth Command. As the Defiance turned to flee, the Vorn ship fired again, grazing their hull. The lights flickered and smoke filled parts of the bridge. We've lost 20% of our engine power, Mark reported. But we can still outrun them if we push what we have left. Do it, Stone ordered. The Defiance shot forward, pushing its damaged engines to their limits. The Vorn ship followed but couldn't match the human vessel's speed. After 30 minutes of chase, they finally lost sight of the alien ship. 2 days later, the bridge crew gathered around a table in the briefing room. Pieces of metal and other materials from the alien attack were spread out on the surface. Tom, Reed pointed to a twisted piece of metal. This is part of our hull where their weapon hit. Look at this. He used a magnifier to show the damage. The metal didn't just melt or break. It changed at the atomic level. Their weapons don't just use energy to destroy. They change the basic nature of matter. Can we defend against that? Stone asked. Tom shook his head. Not with our current shields. They work on completely different principles. Linda spoke up. I've been analyzing what little we got from scanning their communications. They call themselves the Vorn. From what I can tell, they see other species, so it's beneath them. Not worthy of respect or even communication. They certainly didn't want to talk, Stone said grimly. The ship's doctor joined them, looking worried. Captain, those crew members who were closest to the hit points are showing strange symptoms. Nothing serious yet, but there's some kind of radiation we've never seen before. Stone nodded. Do what you can for them, Doc. He turned to his officers. We need to get this information to Earth Command as fast as possible. The Defiance reached the nearest human outpost 2 days later. As they approached, they received urgent messages from Earth Command. Other ships had encountered the Vorn too. 3 colonies had already been attacked. In the command center of the outpost, Admiral James watched the recording of the Defiance's battle with the Vorn ship. They came out of nowhere, the Admiral said. Hit 6 different locations almost at once. No warning, no demands, nothing. Their technology is far beyond ours, Stone said. One ship nearly crippled us with a few hits. It's the same everywhere, the Admiral replied. We're losing ships at a rate of 10 to 1. Nothing in our arsenal seems to hurt them much. Stone looked at the battle map showing Vorn positions. They had pushed deep into human territory in just days. What are your orders, sir? Stone asked. The Defiance is needed on the front lines. We're gathering every ship we can to defend Proxima Centauri. It's our biggest colony and their next likely target. Stone nodded. We'll be ready in 12 hours. My engineer says she can get us back to 90% power by then. Good. Because right now, Captain, we're in a war we didn't start and don't know how to fight. The Admiral's face was grim. And we're losing badly. As Stone walked back to his ship, he looked up at the Defiance. The hull still showed burn marks from the Vorn weapons. His ship had survived when others hadn't. He didn't know if that was luck or something else, but he knew that in the coming days, they would need more than luck to survive. 3 days later, as the Defiance joined the defense fleet at Proxima Centauri, the first wave of Vorn ships appeared on their sensors. The real war was about to begin. The crew of the Defiance stood at their stations, ready to face an enemy with superior weapons and technology. None of them knew it yet, but their ship, damaged and outmatched as it was, would soon become humanity's greatest hope in a war that would test the limits of human courage and ingenuity. 3 months had passed since the first attack. The war with the Vorn was going badly for humans. 20 colonies had been attacked. 7 were completely destroyed. Thousands of people were dead or missing. The Defiance floated in space near Proxima Centauri, part of a fleet of 30 human ships. Captain Stone looked tired as he studied the battle map on the bridge. Red dots showed Vorn ships. Blue dots showed human ships. There were many more red dots than blue. They're coming, said Bob from the sensor station. 5 Vorn ships approaching from the east quadrant. Stone nodded. Alert all ships. Battle positions. The human fleet formed a defensive line in front of the colony. The Defiance took position in the center. On the view screen, the spider-like Vorn ships appeared, their dark hulls seeming to swallow the starlight. All weapons ready, the tactical officer reported. But sir, based on previous battles, Stone finished the thought. I know. Our weapons don't do much damage to them. He took a deep breath. But we have to try. The colony has 20,000 people on it. The Vorn ships fired first. Purple beams cut through space toward the human fleet. 2 smaller ships exploded immediately. The Defiance took a direct hit, but its shields held, though they dropped to 30% power. Return fire, Stone ordered. The human fleet fired everything they had. Missiles, energy beams, and projectile weapons all targeted the Vorn ships. Most bounced off or did minor damage. We hit their lead ship multiple times, Bob reported. But their shields are still at 85%. Another wave of purple beams shot out from the Vorn ships. 3 more human vessels exploded. The Defiance shook as it was hit again. Shields at 15%, the tactical officer shouted. Stone gripped his chair. Continue firing, target their weapon points. The battle raged for 20 minutes. One by one, human ships were destroyed. By the time it was over, only 7 human ships remained, including the Defiance. They had managed to damage 1 Vorn ship, badly enough that it retreated. The others continued toward the colony. Captain, Linda called from communications. Admiral James is ordering all remaining ships to evacuate as many colonists as possible and retreat. Stone's face hardened. We can't save everyone. No, sir, Linda said quietly. We can't. The Defiance and the other surviving ships raced to the colony. They loaded as many people as they could fit into cargo holds, corridors, and every available space. As the last ships lifted off, the Vorn began bombarding the colony from orbit. Stone watched on the view screen as buildings collapsed and fires spread across the once beautiful colony. The Defiance shook as debris hit their hull. Get us out of here, he ordered, his voice heavy. Maximum speed to Earth. In the engine room of the Defiance, engineer Lisa West worked through the night. The ship had taken heavy damage but was still flying better than it should be. This wasn't the first time. The Defiance had survived 3 major battles now when similar ships had been destroyed. Lisa examined a piece of the hull that had been hit directly by a Vorn weapon. There was damage, but not as much as there should have been. She ran tests on the metal, comparing it to the standard hull specifications. This doesn't make sense, she muttered to herself. The door to the engine room opened and Captain Stone walked in. He looked exhausted. How bad is it? He asked. Lisa stood up straight. That's just it, sir. It's not as bad as it should be. We took direct hits that would have cut through other ships like butter. Stone looked confused. Are you saying we got lucky? No, sir. I'm saying there's something different about our ship. She pointed to her computer screen. Look at these test results. Our hull has something in it that's not in the standard specifications. Some kind of metal alloy I've never seen before. Stone studied the screen. Could this be why we've survived when other ships haven't? I think so, sir. Somehow this alloy seems to disperse the Vorn weapons better than standard hulls. It doesn't make us invincible, but it gives us a chance. For the first time in days, Stone felt a small spark of hope. Can we replicate it? I need to do more tests, but if we can figure out what this is, maybe. The trip back to Earth took 5 days. During that time, Lisa worked non-stop testing the hull material. By the time they reached Earth orbit, she had a theory. In the briefing room at Earth Command headquarters, Stone and Lisa presented their findings to Admiral Wilson and the other fleet commanders. We believe the Defiance was accidentally built with about 8% of an experimental alloy, Lisa explained. According to the shipyard records, it wasn't supposed to be used in actual construction. It was just being tested. A mistake? Admiral Wilson asked. A lucky mistake, Stone said. This alloy seems to disperse the Vorn energy weapons better than our standard hull material. We've run simulations, Lisa continued. If we could refit the Defiance with more of this alloy, especially around critical systems, It might be able to take 3 or 4 direct hits before failing. The room was silent for a moment as everyone considered this information. How quickly could we refit the Defiance? Admiral Wilson finally asked. 2 weeks, Lisa answered. Maybe less if we rush it. And other ships? Lisa shook her head. Much longer. We'd need to manufacture more of the alloy first, and there's a risk this material wasn't fully tested. It might have structural weaknesses we don't know about yet. Admiral Wilson stood up. Captain Stone, while your ship is being refitted, I want you and your tactical officer to develop new combat strategies. If this alloy works, we need tactics to take advantage of it. Stone nodded. Yes, sir. Engineer West, you'll lead the refit project. Work with Chief Engineer Turner at the main shipyard. We're getting reports that the Vorn are moving toward New Hope Colony, another officer announced. It's our largest colony after Proxima Centauri. If it falls, then we need to move fast, Admiral Wilson said. Because right now the Defiance might be our best hope. As they left the meeting, Stone caught up with Lisa in the hallway. Can this really work? He asked quietly. Lisa looked at him seriously. I don't know, sir. But what I do know is that the Defiance has survived when it shouldn't have, 3 times now. I don't believe in magic or miracles. So there has to be a scientific explanation. Stone nodded. Then let's find it, because we're going to need more than luck to win this war. 2 weeks later, the refitted Defiance left Earth orbit heading for New Hope Colony. The defensive line there was already engaging Vorn ships. Reports said they were losing badly. As the Defiance jumped to faster-than-light speed, the crew was tense but determined. They were about to find out if their ship's unique properties were enough to change the course of a war that humanity was losing. The Defiance came out of faster-than-light travel near New Hope Colony. The view screen showed a battle already in progress. 4 human ships fought against 3 Vorn vessels. Even as they watched, one of the human ships exploded. Battle stations, Captain Stone ordered. Weapons ready. Let's see what our new hull can do. The Defiance moved forward quickly, targeting the nearest Vorn ship. They fired all weapons at once. The Vorn ship turned, surprised by the new arrival. They're firing, Bob shouted from his station. The purple beam hit the Defiance directly. The ship shook, but not as badly as before. Shield status? Stone asked. Shields at 65%, the tactical officer replied, sounding surprised. That same hit would have dropped us to nearly 0 before the refit. Stone smiled for the first time in weeks. Fire again. All weapons. The Defiance continued its attack, drawing fire from the Vorn ships. After taking 3 more direct hits, their shields were still at 40%. It's working, Lisa said from her engineering station. The new hull is dispersing their energy weapon effects. The battle lasted for 2 hours. By the end, the Defiance had taken damage, but was still fighting. With the help of the remaining human ships, they destroyed 1 Vorn vessel and forced the others to retreat. As the crew assessed the damage, Admiral Wilson called from Earth Command. Captain Stone, your report says the Defiance took 5 direct hits and is still operational? Yes, sir, Stone replied. The hull modifications worked better than we hoped. We're damaged but still fighting. This could be the breakthrough we've been waiting for, the Admiral said. I'm sending Chief Engineer Turner to New Hope with more of the experimental alloy. We need to understand exactly why it works and how to make more of it quickly. 3 days later, the Defiance docked at New Hope's orbital station. Chief Engineer Mike Turner arrived on a fast transport with equipment and materials. In the ship's main engineering lab, Lisa and Mike studied pieces of the hull that had been hit by Vorn weapons. Amazing, Mike said, examining a metal sample under a scanner. The alloy doesn't just resist the energy, it actually absorbs and redistributes it. Lisa nodded. That's why we can take hits that would destroy other ships. But there's something else? She pointed to another screen showing the ship's design. The way the Defiance was built, with this alloy scattered throughout the hull instead of in one area, actually created a kind of network that spreads out the energy. A happy accident, Mike said. If we had planned to put this alloy in, we probably would have concentrated it in specific areas. Which wouldn't work nearly as well, Lisa finished. Sometimes mistakes lead to discoveries. While the engineers worked, Captain Stone met with his tactical officer Dave Miller in the battle simulation room. They studied recordings of Vorn ships in combat. "Look at how they move," Stone said, pointing to the screen. "They're powerful but not very agile. They turn slowly, especially after firing their main weapons." Dave nodded. "You're right. They seem to need a few seconds to recharge. During that time, they're less maneuverable. Our ships are smaller and faster. If we can take a hit or two, without being destroyed, we could use that time to get in close and hit them where they're weakest," Dave finished. Stone smiled. "Exactly." A week later, Admiral Wilson arrived at New Hope to see the progress firsthand. In the colony's main conference room, the team presented their findings. Lisa and Mike explained the properties of the experimental alloy. "We call it dispersal metal now," Mike said. "We've figured out how to manufacture more of it, but it will take time. We recommend starting with partial refits of our remaining ships, focusing on protecting vital systems." Captain Stone and Dave presented their new battle tactics. "The Vorn expect us to stay at a distance and trade fire until we're destroyed," Stone explained. "Their ships are designed for long-range combat, but with hulls that can withstand a few direct hits, we can change our approach." Dave showed a simulation on the screen. Instead of forming a line, our ships would attack in groups of 3 from different angles. While the Vorn are firing at one ship, the others close in to attack at short range. "Will this work?" Admiral Wilson asked. "There are no guarantees in war," Stone replied. "But right now, doing what we've been doing means certain defeat. We need to try something different." After the meeting, the Admiral authorized full production of the dispersal metal and approved Stone's new tactics. The Defiance would be the test ship for both the hull modifications and the new combat approach. 2 weeks later, sensors detected a large Vorn fleet heading toward New Hope. This was not a small attack force. It was a full invasion fleet of 15 ships. The human defenders had 8 ships, including the Defiance. 3 had been partially refitted with the new alloy. The others were standard vessels. They would be outgunned and outnumbered. On the bridge of the Defiance, Captain Stone addressed his crew. "Today we find out if our discoveries can make a difference," he said. "We're facing long odds, but remember, 3 months ago, one Vorn ship could destroy 10 of ours without much effort. Now we know our ship can take their hits and keep fighting." He looked around at the determined faces of his crew. The Defiance isn't just a name. It's what humanity does when backed into a corner. We defy the odds. We defy those who think they can wipe us out. And today, we're going to show the Vorn what humans can do when we have even half a chance to fight back. The crew cheered. Even knowing the danger ahead, they felt something they hadn't felt in months: hope. As the Vorn fleet appeared on long-range sensors, the human ships moved into their new formation. The Defiance took the lead position in the first attack group. "All ships, this is Captain Stone," he said over the fleet communication channel. "Remember your training. Stay with your groups, support each other. And remember, we only need to destroy 3 of their ships to make them reconsider this attack." Human fleet moved forward to meet the enemy. For the first time since the war began, they were not just trying to survive a little longer. They were fighting to win. The Defiance accelerated toward the Vorn fleet, its modified hull gleaming in the light of New Hope's sun. The ship that had survived when others didn't was about to show the Vorn that humans had found a way to fight back. The battle at New Hope Colony changed everything. The human fleet, using their new tactics and modified ships, destroyed 4 Vorn vessels while losing only 3 of their own. The rest of the Vorn ships retreated, something they had never done before when they had superior numbers. Word of the victory spread quickly through human space. For the first time since the war began, people had reason to hope. In the weeks that followed, engineer Lisa West led a program to refit as many human ships as possible with the dispersal metal. Captain Stone traveled between fleet bases, teaching other captains his tactics. But Lisa wasn't satisfied with just copying what worked on the Defiance. She wanted to find more ways to fight back. "If this metal can help us survive their weapons," she told Captain Stone, "maybe we can find other technologies to help us fight better." Stone agreed. The Defiance will be your test ship. Try anything you think might work. 1 month after the Battle of New Hope, the Defiance looked very different. Its hull was now completely covered with the dispersal metal. But there were other changes too. In the ship's cargo bay, Lisa showed Captain Stone her latest modification. This used to be a mining laser, she explained, pointing to a large device mounted on a platform. We've modified it to work as a weapon. Stone looked confused. Mining equipment, will it be effective against Vorn's shields? That's the interesting part, Lisa said. Mining lasers are designed to cut through dense rock and metal. They work on different principles than our military weapons. We think the Vorn might not be prepared for this type of attack. What else have you come up with? Stone asked. Lisa led him around the ship, showing various modifications. Industrial cutting tools mounted as close-range weapons. Tractor beams from cargo ships modified to disrupt Vorn shields. Even civilian communication arrays repurposed to create signal interference. We're not just trying to match their weapons technology, Lisa explained. We're changing how we think about our ships. Instead of just weapon platforms, we're turning them into multi-purpose tools. Stone nodded in approval. The Vorn seem rigid in their approach. They have powerful weapons, but they always use them the same way. We need to be unpredictable. 2 weeks later, human scouts reported a large Vorn fleet gathering near the Sirius star system. It was their biggest force yet, 20 ships, including some new, larger vessels. Earth Command decided to make a stand at Sirius. If this system fell, the Vorn would have a clear path to several major human worlds, including Earth itself. The human fleet had grown too. They now had 25 ships, 12 of which had been at least partially refitted with dispersal metal. All carried some of the new modified equipment that Lisa and other engineers had developed. The Defiance, now famous throughout the fleet, led the central battle group. Captain Stone addressed all ship commanders before the battle. The Vorn expect us to fight like we did before, to stand in a line and exchange fire until we're destroyed. They don't understand that humans don't give up. We adapt. We find new ways to fight. Today we show them that no matter what weapons they bring, our ships are enough to beat them. When the Vorn fleet arrived at Sirius, they found the human ships arranged in a formation they hadn't seen before. Instead of a defensive line, the human vessels were in small groups, spread out across a wide area. The battle began with the Vorn firing their powerful energy weapons. Some human ships took hits, but instead of exploding, they kept fighting. The ships with dispersal metal hulls absorbed much of the energy, just as the Defiance had done. Then the human fleet put their new plan into action. While some ships engaged the Vorn at a distance, others used their engines at full power to circle around behind the enemy. On the bridge of the Defiance, Stone gave the order to activate their secret weapon. Fire the mining lasers. The repurposed mining equipment shot out intense beams of energy, different from standard weapons. When they hit the nearest Vorn ship, something unexpected happened. The beams didn't bounce off their shields. Instead, they cut through, drilling into the ships. "Oh, it's working," Bob shouted from the sensor station. "Their shields aren't designed to stop this type of energy." Throughout the human fleet, ships began using their modified industrial equipment, cutting beams, tractor pulses, and other non-standard. Attacks hit the Vorn ships from multiple angles. The Vorn tried to adjust, turning to face the new threats. But their large ships moved slowly, and the human vessels darted around them, attacking from new directions before the Vorn could respond. 3 hours into the battle, the humans had destroyed 5 Vorn ships while losing only 4 of their own. It was an even exchange, something that would have been unthinkable just 2 months earlier. The Vorn commanders, facing unexpected resistance, made a decision. Their remaining ships pulled back and jumped away from the system. The human fleet had held the line at Sirius. After the battle, technicians recovered pieces of a damaged Vorn ship. Among them was a communication device that still worked. Linda, the communications officer, spent days trying to decode it. "Captain, I've got something," she finally said, calling Stone to her station. "I've managed to translate some of their messages during the battle." She played the recording. The translated voice sounded confused and angry. "Human ships surviving direct hits. Impossible. Weapons we've never seen. They're using industrial equipment as weapons. Their tactics make no sense. Stone smiled. They don't understand us. They thought they knew what we could do, but they didn't count on human creativity. There's more, Linda said. Messages sent after the battle to their high command. They're confused. They don't understand how we adapted so quickly. One commander even questions whether they should continue attacking human worlds. They're reconsidering, Stone said. Good. Maybe now they'll think twice before attacking another colony. Admiral Wilson contacted the Defiance later that day. Congratulations, Captain. The victory at Sirius has given us breathing room. But our work isn't done. The Vorn are still out there, and they'll be back. We'll be ready, Stone replied. We're refitting more ships every day, and Engineer West has more ideas for modifications. That's what I wanted to talk to you about, the Admiral said. I'm authorizing a special mission. We've located a major Vorn staging area. They have a large fleet gathering there, including supply ships. I want the Defiance to lead an attack force. Stone was surprised. An attack? Not just defense? It's time we took the fight to them, Admiral Wilson said. Show them that humans aren't just good at surviving. We can hit back too. As the communication ended, Stone looked around his bridge. His crew had been through so much, but they had never backed down. Now they were being asked to lead an attack on enemy territory. What do you think? He asked them. Are we ready to take the fight to the Vorn? The crew's response was immediate and unanimous. They were ready. The Defiance had started as just one ship trying to survive. Now it was leading humanity's counterattack. The ship that shouldn't have survived was about to show the Vorn that humans were far more dangerous than they had imagined. 6 months had passed since the first Vorn attack. The human fleet looked very different now. Most ships had been modified with dispersal metal and carried an odd mix of weapons. Military, industrial, and even civilian technology repurposed for war. The Defiance, once just another destroyer, was now the flagship of humanity's counterattack force. Its hull was completely covered with dispersal metal, giving it a distinctive blue-gray color. Attached to its frame were mining lasers, tractor beam projectors, and other devices that no military designer would have ever planned to put on a warship. Captain Stone gathered his officers in the briefing room. A holographic map showed their target, a Vorn staging area in a star system 20 light-years from human space. This is where they're gathering their invasion fleet, Stone explained. Intelligence says they have at least 30 ships there, including their largest command vessels. 30 ships? Asked Dave, the tactical officer. We only have 15 in our attack force. Yes, Stone nodded. But we have something they don't, unpredictability. They still think in traditional military terms. We don't anymore. Lisa, now the fleet's chief engineer, pointed to different areas on the map. Their supply ships will be here and here. They're lightly defended because the Vorn never expected us to attack them. If we can destroy those, their main fleet will be stranded without fuel and ammunition. This is a hit-and-run mission, Stone continued. We go in fast, hit their supply lines, and get out. We're not trying to defeat their entire fleet yet. What about their patrol ships? Bob asked. That's where the Defiance comes in, Stone said with a small smile. We'll lead the first attack group to draw their attention. While they're focused on us, the second and third groups will hit the supply ships. It was a risky plan. The Defiance would face the heaviest fire, but if it worked, it could change the course of the war. 3 days later, the human attack fleet waited at the edge of the Vorn staging area. Final checks were being made on all ships. New weapons were tested one last time. On the bridge of the Defiance, Captain Stone looked at his crew. They had been through so much together, retreats, losses, and finally some victories. Now they were about to do something no human fleet had done before. Take the offensive against the Vorn. All ships report ready, Captain, Linda said from communications. Stone nodded. Send the message to all ships. Remember New Hope. Remember all the colonies we couldn't save. Today we show the Vorn that humans fight back. The attack fleet moved forward, accelerating to attack speed. They had one advantage. The Vorn weren't expecting them. Their sensors would only detect the human ships minutes before they arrived. Vorn. Patrol ships detecting us, Bob reported from sensors. They're moving to intercept. All according to plan, Stone said calmly. Attack Group 1, follow the Defiance. Groups 2 and 3, prepare to break off on my signal. The Defiance and 4 other ships accelerated toward the center of the Vorn formation. The Vorn patrol ships, 8 in total, moved to meet them head-on. They're powering up weapons, Dave reported. Brace for impact, Stone ordered. Remember, we need to draw their attention, make them think we're going for their command ships. The Vorn fired first, purple beams cutting through space. The Defiance took 2 direct hits but kept going, its modified hull absorbing much of the energy. Return fire, all weapons, Stone ordered. The Defiance fired everything it had. Standard weapons, mining lasers, and modified industrial equipment. 2 other human ships followed suit, creating a storm of different energy types and projectiles that confused the Vorn sensors. Groups 2 and 3, break off now, Stone commanded. While the Defiance and its group engaged the patrol ships, the other 10 human vessels split off, racing toward the supply areas at maximum speed. The battle grew intense. The Defiance took more hits, its shields dropping to dangerous levels. One of the accompanying human ships was badly damaged, but they had achieved their goal. All Vorn patrol ships were focused on them. Sir, Bob called out. Groups 2 and 3 report they've reached the supply ships. They're beginning their attack. Stone allowed himself a smile. Keep the patrol ships busy. We need to give them time. The Defiance executed a series of tight maneuvers that would have been considered suicidal in normal combat. It flew directly between 2 Vorn ships, firing all weapons in different directions. The Vorn, unused to such tactics, couldn't adjust quickly enough. Their own weapons fire nearly hit each other as the human ship passed between them. Supply ships under attack, Linda reported, listening to fleet communications. First target destroyed, second one heavily damaged. The Vorn commanders finally realized what was happening. They ordered some patrol ships to break off and protect the supply areas, but it was too late. All supply ships destroyed or disabled, Linda announced, her voice excited. Groups 2 and 3 are beginning their retreat. That's our cue, Stone said. All ships in Attack Group 1, disengage and retreat at maximum speed. The Defiance turned sharply, its engines at full power. The other ships in its group followed. The Vorn patrol ships pursued, but they were slower and couldn't catch the agile human vessels. As they reached safe distance for faster-than-light travel, Stone took one last look at the tactical display. The Vorn staging area was in chaos. Without their supply ships, their invasion fleet was stranded. It would take them months to replace what had been destroyed in just 30 minutes. 2 weeks later, at Earth Command headquarters, Admiral Wilson addressed the fleet captains. The attack on the Vorn staging area was more successful than we could have hoped, she said. Not only did we destroy their supplies, but we've received word through our intelligence channels that the Vorn High Command is questioning their entire strategy against Earth. Stone, sitting among the other captains, felt a surge of pride. The Defiance had led the way, but every ship and crew member had played a part in the victory. Admiral Wilson continued. Most surprising of all, we've received a transmission from the Vorn central government. They're requesting peace talks. A murmur ran through the room. Peace talks? After months of relentless attacks, the Vorn wanted to talk? We don't know if they're sincere, the Admiral cautioned. But the fact that they're willing to talk at all is significant. They've never negotiated with any species they've encountered before. After the meeting, Admiral Wilson asked Captain Stone to stay behind. The Defiance will transport our diplomatic team to the peace talks, she told him. The Vorn specifically requested your ship. My ship? Stone was surprised. Why? Apparently, you made quite an impression. Their message mentioned the blue-gray ship that could not be destroyed. They've never encountered a species that adapted so quickly to their weapons. Stone thought about everything his ship and crew had been through. We didn't win because we had better weapons. We won because we refused to give up, and because we were willing to try things the Vorn would never consider. Exactly, the Admiral smiled. And that's the message we want to send at these peace talks. Humans will use whatever we have, our ships, our tools, our minds, to survive and protect our worlds. 1 week later, the Defiance left Earth orbit with the diplomatic team aboard. As the blue-gray ship jumped to faster-than-light speed, Captain Stone stood on the bridge, looking at the stars streaking by on the view screen. The ship that had survived, when others didn't, that had led the first successful counterattack, was now carrying humanity's hopes for peace. Whatever happened next, the Defiance had proven that humans could face any challenge and find a way to overcome it. As one of his crew had said during the darkest days of the war, "It's not the weapons that win wars, it's the people using them." The Vorn had learned that lesson the hard way, and if peace failed, well, the Defiance would be ready to fight again. Because no matter what weapons their enemies brought to battle, humans had proven that their ships and their determination were enough to win.